views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to writers and reporters and editors and videographers and filmmakers and photographers, really anybody putting stuff out in the Bronx. And this evening, I am thrilled because we have an ace reporter who has really been reporting with great detail on the housing crisis in New York City and of course in the borough of the Bronx. And in the second segment, we have a poet, a young poet. I got to tell you, she took my heart away with the stuff she's been writing about the borough, about herself in the borough of the Bronx. But let's get started. Let's go to the city and say hello to Allison Dikanovic. And Allison, nice to have you with us on the program.
Hi, Gary. Thanks so much for having me.
Let's just, since you haven't been on the program before, let's meet and greet a little bit. Talk to me a little bit about your background. Are you from New York? Where are you from? And how did you land at The City, which is such a wonderful publication?
Yeah, sure. I am not from New York. I am originally from just south of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I moved to New York about a year and a half ago, not too long ago, for graduate school. So I'm actually still a student. I'm at CUNY's Graduate Center at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. And that is how I landed at the city. So in my time at school, one of my professors, Terry Parrish Jr., he is the engagement director at the city, and he's working on a project called the Open Newsroom, which is our effort to make local news collaborative. So that it's focused, it started focused mostly in Brooklyn, but then during the pandemic expanded to the whole city, and we hold different community meetings. Right now they've been on Zoom to talk with residents about the issues that are impacting them, things that are most important to them, how local news could do a better job of covering those. And the biggest issue that came up over and over again is rent and housing.
Housing, for sure.
Yeah.
Which
So
which
that's how, yeah.
which in the Bronx might be, and really everywhere right now, might be second place to healthcare and everything else. But certainly in terms when we're in quote unquote normal times, housing would be there. I got a two-part question. And why journalism? And then of course, what's it been like for a girl from Wisconsin to come to New York City and be here and not only live here, but really roll up your sleeves and report?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a curious person. I've always had a lot of questions. I used to think I wanted to be a lawyer because I liked to argue. But then
This is a much friendlier dialogue. We don't have to go there if we don't have to.
yeah, no, not at all. And then yeah, in journalism, I realized that I mean, it's much more interesting to me to learn about people's actual experiences, and I've been very curious about cities and how we can make them better. And yeah, it's the best job ever. I get to learn about what's going on. I get to learn about the things that are happening, who's most impacted by them, who's making the decisions that could have an impact on that, and I get to share that with people.
We're a little bit chauvinistic about the Bronx and our big city of New York City. So I'm just wondering, had you ever been here before? And really, what's it like to wander through the morass of all the issues and the legislation and the complexities of New York City?
Yeah, the first time I had been to the Bronx was actually for a reporting trip as well. I was covering the youth justice system in Wisconsin, and some reforms that were being proposed were already taking place here in New York. And there was some great examples of some community organizations in the Bronx that were doing interesting work with young people involved in the justice system. So I got to come out here and learn about that. And that was my first time in the Bronx. It was a few years ago.
Mhm. And your impressions, and I'm going to just again pump what I know. When you want to talk about all of these issues, This is home base. This is ground zero for all of those things. Healthcare, the various epidemics, the housing issues. So, I mean, that's my advocacy for the borough of the Bronx. But how's it been?
It's been great. I mean, the city's fascinating. It, like you said, it's kind of I was going to say microcosm, but it's also so massive. But it's such an interesting intersection of people and cultures and issues. And
You think
I love it here.
you think you're going to stay for a while after you graduate? That's again me pumping my advocacy here.
I hope so. That's the goal.
I would love it. So let's just say that I'll say it plain and clear. I read everything that goes out there. Allison's reporting on evictions and housing is unparalleled in New York City media. So congratulations for that. December 31st is a big day, and there are a lot of potential solutions, but there, of course, right now is plain fear about what might happen when the eviction protections are lifted. So, just in general, what are we in for chaos? Do you think there'll be a silver bullet somewhere that will save it? How do you perceive what we're really in for on December 31st?
Yeah, I mean, I think also just something that's important for people to understand is that there already are a lot of mechanisms in place for evictions to be happening right now, even before the end of the year. And that is happening. There are cases that are moving through housing court. There are families who have been evicted in the past few weeks here in the city. So it's not just all on hold until the end of the year. There are a lot of the protections that are in place now are not blanket protections. And so there are ways for cases to continue to proceed through court right now. Um, at the end of the year, I think right now the biggest block or slowdown to evictions in New York City is just the court's capacity, the court's ability to process cases. There's so many more cases than there are judges, than there are courtrooms, and there are
Of course, doing things virtually.
right.
That's a very interesting point. So for people who are very concerned, maybe it helps them out a little bit because it delays, I don't want to say the inevitable, but gives a chance for there to be some relief, maybe a federal program of some kind or some other, even state legislation that'll put a hold on things.
Yeah,
Is my read correct there? That
yeah. At
even
least
though it's
right now, when
unfortunate,
there's
but
not,
that's good. Go ahead, say that.
at least right now, when there's not comprehensive policy to provide rent relief to all the people who need it, or to put a moratorium on all evictions, or to talk of cancel rent or things like that. Until any of that policy goes in place, the biggest protection right now is just the court's inability to move all those cases along at the speed that it would maybe like to. Um,
To process them. The thing that in my own preparation that we had done, I mentioned it to you, but we have done evictions and the potential for them on Bronx Talk this week, which is the show that's been running all week. One of the things that was pronounced to me significantly is that it's kind of a false protection, this eviction protection, because you still, much like if you were suing your landlord, you still have to, put your rent in escrow. So if we're looking at 9 months, and I use this example on Bronx Talk, and you had $1,000 a month rent, for a very affordable apartment, you're looking at a $9,000 bill coming due on December 31st. So that is kind of a relief during the pandemic, but that doesn't mean that people who are out of work or people who have been impacted by the pandemic are going to have that 9 grand. It's like, and that's a low amount. Other people who have higher rents are going to owe much more, right? I mean, this is to me the core of the problem at this point. It's like if rent just started, well, maybe they could figure it out, but right.
no, there's a huge, I should have checked these numbers before I jumped on, but at least, I want to say at least a $2 billion rent shortfall in the state of New York. Don't quote me on that number, but it's a lot of money that people are behind, because yeah, it has been so long. There's a huge deficit in the cost of rent. Yeah.
Among the articles that that you wrote are about answering tenant questions, how to tell if you're being evicted and other tenant questions answered. What are the biggest questions, and what should somebody who's very concerned at this point know? Who can they call? Should they just sit tight? Should they talk to their landlord? Should they talk to a developer? Should they talk to a lawyer? I mean, what is there any advice to give?
Yeah, and I mean, it totally depends on a person's situation. But in general, people have been asking about if they're actually being evicted or not, and what to do if they can be evicted right now. There's a lot of confusion of if people can be evicted or not. And so in general, it is good to talk with a lawyer. And anyone can do so. There's actually a tenant helpline through 311, so people can call 311 and ask to speak to the tenant helpline.
Wow.
And that is staffed by tenant attorneys and housing advocates. And so those are folks that can really help people work through their specific situations. But in general, unless a landlord issues a rent demand and then serves what's called a petition for eviction, and that has to go through the court. That's a court issued document. Once that is issued, that's when the whole process of eviction starts. And evictions are a whole legal process. So just if your landlord just says, I'm evicting you or you need to move out, they may follow through with that, but that doesn't mean anything in and of itself right away. It's a whole process. It needs to move through the courts, and like we said, the courts are backed up right now.
I want to ask you one final question. When we did the program on Bronx Talk, we talked about the Community Service Society's report that called for social housing. I believe it is one of the long-term answers, and it might even be a short-term answer for some. Just what's your take on that? Did you think that report either has merit or is nice, or you think really let's take that seriously and it's a way to revitalize affordable housing in the Bronx and the city of New York?
I mean, I think it's an interesting question. And I think that any time there has been in times of crisis like this is when there has been sweeping reforms to the way that New York City handles its housing policy. And I think this will be this time of crisis is a time where there is potential for changes like they proposed in that report. I think like we talked about, there is a huge rent shortfall. There are a lot of people who are struggling to make their rent. There's a lot of building owners that are struggling to make their payments. There's a lot of foreclosures that are potentially on the horizon. There's a lot that's unknown. And at the same time, there are also developers that are ready to capitalize on that. And so it's kind of this moment for the city to decide how it wants to.
And there are opportunities. Before the show, we were talking about land trusts and all these things, which have been part of the dialogue in the borough of the Bronx and throughout New York City. Allison Dikanovic from the city, thank you so much. The only thing I'm going to tell you, keep doing it. We love what you're doing. It's so important, especially to the Bronx, because there are such housing issues. Is that really your beat, and you're going to be covering that, or it's just this is kind of...
And we actually, so a lot of my reporting that I'm doing is part of a series of rent updates that folks can sign up for directly to get those either sent to their email inbox or have them texted to their phones, or join a Facebook group. So if people want to go to the city's website, it's thecity.nyc, to sign up for the rent updates, they can do so, and they can get those updates right to them.
We got to run. Thank you so much. Say hello to all my friends at the city, and we hope that you'll come back. We hope that things clear up and you'll come back and give us all the great news.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
We'll root for that. Thank you so much. We're going to take a short break, and as I said, we're going to bring on the poet that you are really going to enjoy right after this. Don't go. Hey there, back with you on the Bronx Buzz, and I am really thrilled. I told the guest that I'm thrilled to have her on. We love all our guests, but Brianna Lopez is a young poet who just put out her first book. And I told her, and I'm telling you before we even start the interview, I was completely taken by it. I thought the writing was the expression of a young Bronxite, a Bronx girl, and it just spoke volumes to me, even though I was never a Bronx girl. So let's say hello to Brianna Lopez. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Let's just talk a little bit about you growing up in the Bronx. Where did you grow up? What neighborhood?
Yeah, so I grew up in Pelham Manor. It's kind of like in the North Bronx area.
Mm-hmm. And did you like growing up in the Bronx? Was it a difficult place to grow up?
For me, it wasn't a difficult place. I would like to say I grew up in a very nice area. So I was very safe and comfortable everywhere that I was. So I loved growing up in the Bronx. It was really a great experience.
And it inspired you to be a writer. I'd like to think that the life you led had you, deciding to write. So why don't you describe the book is The Night. You have a copy of it. Hold it up.
Yeah.
Hold up. There we go. This is the power of Zoom. The book is called The Nighttime Series. Let's talk a little bit about your writing when you started to write and then when you realized, wait a minute, this could be a book.
Yeah, so I originally started writing this book as a way to just keep myself accountable for writing every day, to kind of keep on working on getting my skills better. And that's why I also titled it Night whatever number with the date, so that I could one day look back on it and say, okay, I did do this. I would see January 1st through December 31st, and I would have something to be proud of. And in the end, it really didn't work out that way. I don't have 365 nights, but it still kind of gave me something to be proud of, because I see a lot of growth in this. And that's why I decided to go through and publish it, because I can see a lot of growth in myself through this, and I hope that can help other people see that in themselves too.
I guess what you have said raises two questions in my mind. Number one, how old were you when you wrote it, when you put all this stuff on paper? And number two, what you said suggests to me that you always wanted to be a writer. Is that true? Is that what, you said, gee, I really want to be a writer? Or was it the other way around? You started writing and said, oh, now I'm a writer.
No, I think it was always that I wanted to be a writer. And to answer your first question, I wrote this when I was 19, so in my 19th year, and then I decided to publish it right when I turned 20. But yeah, I always wanted to be a writer. I was never much of a talker. I was always an introvert, and writing was always my outlet to express the things I couldn't say in words. So I always thought that this is definitely where I was going to take it. I just didn't know that I would decide to do it at such a young age.
What were the things that inspired you to put down? I mean, some of it, I know people are just going to really relate to it. Some of it is very obvious what inspired, which is life in the Bronx and things like that. But just talk to me from your perspective. What is the inspiration? I'm always interested in an artist's muse. What is and what was your muse?
Yeah, well, there was a lot of different things that kind of went into what inspired it. I think at the core, it was me just beginning to deal with my anxiety. And I never really knew not only where it came from, but just how to deal with it. So through writing, I was able to kind of express it in a different language and help myself understand, okay, this is what I'm feeling. And in the process, it helped me feel better about it. So that was definitely a core thing. And then the rest of it was just kind of my experiences dealing with that anxiety in the real world and my relationships and things like that.
Among the things that, excuse me, among the things that speak to me very loudly are just the expression of a young Bronx person growing up, dealing, just like you said things that maybe you were uncomfortable about, maybe you wanted to self-actualize a little better than you ever had before. And I think you articulated so well. One of the things, and I'm going to use this analogy, and you're going to think that the comparison is remarkable, but a young Bronx woman named Sonia Sotomayor, who happens to be a justice in the United States Supreme Court, I once saw her speaking about West Side Story. And she talked about the relevance of who wasn't, from her perspective, a young Bronx girl staring in the mirror going, I feel pretty, oh so pretty. And when I read some of your work, I said, this is exactly what it's like. It's a Bronx girl coming of age, coming of realization, and all these kinds of things. So I make that comparison with the utmost respect, certainly for the Justice Sotomayor, but also for you, because it to me, it just talks about who we are and our culture, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted you to read something. And I thought it's crazy, but the acknowledgement is so beautiful and so simple. I've already shown it to a few people and they're like, oh my God, that's lovely. So would you just be so kind to just read the acknowledgement of the book? And the book, by the way, just to let people know again, is called The Nighttime Series, a collection of poetry and short stories by Brianna Lopez. So here's the acknowledgement.
Yeah, so the second part of the acknowledgement is actually to my boyfriend, and it goes, for Jimmy, for being willing to move mountains to give me the world. A boy is just a boy until he is the love of your life. Then he is everything. Thank you for proving that to me.
Just out of curiosity, since I had you read aloud, do you read the stuff aloud when you write it, so that because of course now word poetry and spoken word is something. Do you do that, or is that not part of your process?
It actually has become part of my process, because I think that when I hear things, it makes me kind of know where the power in the piece is, so I can really emphasize those parts. So I've incorporated it somewhat. So it actually has worked out well for me using that.
Jimmy owes you, right? He now, boy, woo! You did a job, man. Are you kidding me? He must have been thrilled to do that. Do you view this work as the beginning of something further? Like, do you feel like you're going to be writing more? They talk about musicians. They work 20 years and they put all their best songs into the first album, and then by the second album, it's like I got to create a whole new thing. How do you look at that?
Well, I definitely want to keep publishing as much as I can. And I kind of did have a moment like that where I was like, did I just publish all of my best work? Do I not have anything left? But then I remembered,
I'm done. I got nothing left.
And then I just remembered, I've been writing since I was a kid. I have so much to share with the world and with my readers. It's just a matter of now kind of not changing it, but editing it so that it doesn't sound like an 11-year-old wrote it. So I definitely have things to work with, and I do have plans to publish again. I just have to, take the time to really edit and revise and really work it.
Maybe I'm pushing you too far. Do you think it will be something similar in this kind of self-expression? Or do you see yourself like, I'm going to make a novel, or I'm going to do something else?
No, I definitely think it'll be similar in the self-expression aspect, because that's what I use my writing for, to express myself. So whatever I put out there is definitely going to emulate that.
I want to let's do one more, a very short piece. I like Night One. And this goes back to what Brianna said about, that she dates them kind of, so it's the first night. How long ago was this written, by the way?
This was probably before I even thought to publish, so probably in 2018.
Okay. Well, you read this and then we'll chat.
Okay. It's called Night One, an old piece to begin with empowerment. Your name popped up on my phone and I didn't feel a thing. Empty, as if history had erased itself. This is what it's like to be over you.
You are a tough customer. There's no question about it. Anyway, so that's just a little snippet. There are many, many more really interesting pieces that are in there. I will tell people the Nighttime series is available on Amazon, I presume everywhere books are sold. Now, when did it come out, and what kind of feedback have you gotten so far?
Yeah, so it came out in July 2020, right around my birthday. And yeah, because I wanted to publish it on my 20th birthday. And the feedback has been really great so far. I've been very happy because I never really expected it to be like more than just my distant relatives that were buying this book, but then I see people giving me reviews from California and places that I've never been that are reading this book. And it just means a lot to me that it's getting out there and people are actually enjoying it.
Did you self-publish or was it published by somebody else?
I did self-publish.
I think it's great. You know, the opportunity to do that now is much greater than it has ever been. You know, something I didn't ask you, and I'm always curious, and I think it identifies, you know, something about you. Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Millennium High School. It's down on Wall Street, actually.
You went all the way downtown.
Yeah, it was like a 2-hour train ride every morning.
Wow, you were dedicated, but you know, maybe you're seeing some of the results of that now because you put out a book and all that. Now, for people who don't know, they probably don't know, you are in Florida now at college.
Yes.
And are you studying writing?
Yes, I'm studying English with a specialization in professional writing because that's really where I want to take my career in the future.
Mm-hmm. It's of no consequence to this conversation. I was an English major in college. Look where it took me. I don't know what the heck is going on. Anyway, Brianna, we are just Brianna Lopez, Brianna Evelise Lopez. The Nighttime series is the book. I urge everybody, especially with young people around, to get that book. But really, it's not limited. I'm not a young person, and I was taken by it. I bought one online. So if you sold one, it was to me. And I'm sure you sold many others because I just felt here's a young writer for the Bronx we got to support. Anyway, Brianna, thank you so much for joining us in the Bronx Buzz. We really appreciate it. Stay safe at college. And anytime you have stuff to write or you want to shout about something you're working on, this is your home at Bronx Net Television.
Thank you so much.
Great. All right, there she is, Brianna Lopez. And we also thank Allison Dikanovic for joining us from the city. And guess what? That's it for the Bronx Buzz. Thanks to our great producer, Rebecca Hemick. And we will see you next week on the Bronx Buzz. On Bronx Talk this week, should be very exciting. I'll be moderating the debate for the special election for City Council in the 12th Council District. That will hit your television Monday night at 9 o'clock. So we'll see you around town. Wear your mask, stay distant from your friends and neighbors. We'll get there. Don't worry about it. And good night.